Hello and welcome to video 3 for Unit 3, Development and Learning. This video will be focusing on the cognitive development throughout our lifespan. At the end of this video, you should be able to answer the following question. How do the theories of cognitive development apply to behavior and mental processes? Specifically, we're going to be looking at Piaget and Vygotsky. Now, some of this cognitive development should be a review from last unit, our cognitive unit. So we're going to start with just a little refresher of some of the things we talked about last unit. First of all, the idea of schema. Remember that schemas are our mental frameworks, our way of organizing information inside of our brain. When we have new pieces of information coming in, we can either assimilate that information into an existing schema, or we can accommodate that information by creating a new schema. These different processes are going to be studied by one of our major researchers in cognitive development, and that is Jean Piaget. And he really looked at how humans grow these schema throughout their lifespan. Piaget's theory of cognitive development really focuses on the stages that we go through as we age. He came up with 4 different stages that children go through, and this was really looking at how our thinking and our learning develops over the course of our lifetime. The first stage is the sensory motor stage, and this stage is from about birth to 2 years old. The sensory motor stage is really focusing on our senses, how we are learning about the world around us through using our 5 senses. This is why babies will put things in their mouth. They really are listening to a lot of things. They might repeat what you say. During this stage, there's a lot of coordination of our motor responses. So there's a sensory curiosity about the world. They're looking around, trying to figure out what's happening, picking things up, grasping things, putting them in their mouths. Language at this time is used for making demands or cataloging what's happening. So babbling stage, we're going to talk about next video, but really this is the time that language is used to really just tell people what their needs and their wants are. During the sensory motor stage, one of the major things that you need to know about is that babies will develop and master the idea of object permanence during Piaget's sensory motor stage. This is developed around the age of 9 months. Object permanence is when an item or a person is outside of our physical view, so underneath a blanket or around a corner. If the baby does not have object permanence, that item or that person goes away. If you can't see it, it does not exist. By around the age of 9 months, babies start to realize, oh, okay, I need to look for that item around the corner or under the blanket. Before the age of 9 months, this is why the game of peekaboo is so hilarious for babies, because when you go behind your hands, you actually don't exist. And so you popping out underneath that blanket or from behind your hands every time is you reappearing, and that's hilarious to babies. The next stage is the pre-operational stage, and this stage is from about 2 to 7 years old. So this is preschool age and kindergarten age. During this time period, children are starting to use symbolic thinking. So they're really starting to put words or phrases to describe objects. They're naming things. They're also starting to use proper syntax and grammar to express concepts that they know. They're using sentences to explain what they know about the world. During this stage, there's also an idea of imagination and intuition that start to become a major part of their development and their play. However, the child still really struggles with abstract concepts and hypothetical thinking. So they're really looking at logical, what's right in front of me. During this stage, children often have what we call egocentrism. Now, we hear that word ego and we often think about someone being like super selfish or into themselves, and that's not exactly what egocentrism means. Egocentrism means that the child cannot enter into the shoes of someone else. They cannot see the world from someone else's viewpoint. The best example of this is if you're driving in a car with a child who's between 2 and 7 years old, they might tell you, oh my gosh, look at that over there. And they don't tell you exactly what they're looking at because they assume that you see exactly what they see. They don't understand that because you're in front of them, you don't know what they're pointing at, and you cannot see what's coming in through their eyes. Also, during this stage, children develop what is called theory of mind. And this is the understanding that others have intentions, desires, beliefs, perceptions, and emotions that are different from their own. Children start showing rudimentary versions of this theory of mind as toddlers, and they start to have a limited understanding of the relationship between belief and action by the age of 3. And really, they're starting to begin to infer false beliefs in others around the age of 4. So this idea of them understanding what other people think or what they believe starts in this stage. During this stage, children also lack what we call conservation. Conservation is the idea that an object will keep its mass even though its shape is changed. So an object or a liquid will keep its mass or its volume even if the shape of that object or liquid is changed. So for example, if I have a very, very tall glass and a wide, shorter glass, and they both have the same amount of water in them, the child does not understand that those two glasses of water have the same amount of water. All they can see is that one has a taller amount of liquid, and so therefore that means that they have more water. They even lack this understanding when you take the water and pour it into a different glass. They can't understand that it's the same amount of water, just in a different shaped glass. Another thing that a child in the pre-operational stage is going to lack is the idea of reversibility. And reversibility is the mental operation that reverses a sequence of events or restores the changed state of affairs to the original condition. Basically, it means if I do a set of steps and I ask the child to do those same steps in reverse, they're really going to struggle to do that because they can't put things back the way they were. In addition, if I mix up a bunch of blocks and I ask them to put the blocks back to where they first started, they're going to really struggle with that. The next stage is concrete operational stage, and this is the school-aged child from ages 7 to 11 years old. The biggest things that we need to know about the concrete operational stage is that they have finally mastered the idea of conservation and the idea of reversibility. These children now can do steps in reverse, which is reversibility, and they can understand that a glass of water poured into a different shaped glass keeps the same volume of water. During this stage, however, children really are not understanding those abstract concepts still. They're still really looking for black and white. Time, space, and quantity are understood and can be applied to a situation, but they're really struggling to understand like the full length of time or the full amount of space that they might need. They can't really think about how long something will take to do. They just know that 15 minutes is 15 minutes. Finally, the last stage that Piaget came up with was the formal operational stage. And really, this is where he was saying 11 and beyond. So there really aren't any stages after 11 years old. We kind of just stay in the formal operational stage for the rest of our life. And this is where you are right now. And this is the idea that humans now have the ability to think in the abstract, the hypothetical, the theoretical ideas. They can start to reason based on facts and logic. They use a strategy and plan to make things efficient. In this stage, a child can also take information or concepts learned in one context and apply it to another context. So if you learn how to dribble a ball in basketball, you can now take that information and those physical skills that you learned and use them in a different situation, maybe when you're playing volleyball or something like that. So as you can see, Piaget's stages really are stages rather than a continuous cycle of development. Piaget believed that you needed to master the skills in one stage before you can move on to the next. However, Piaget's stages aren't super rigid when it comes to ages. So it's not like when you turn 2 years old, that light flips on and you move from sensory motor to pre-operational stage. He does believe that those ages are flexible. However, he did say that children have to move through these stages in order for them to fully develop cognitively. The next theory that we're going to talk about when it comes to cognitive development is Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. And this suggests that our cognitive development really is based on our interaction with other people, and that helps us develop cultural tools to understand the world around us. Cultural tools are explicit and implicit rules or norms in our culture, and this knowledge is transferred through imitation, instructions, or collaborative learning. Language is really going to play a central role in transmitting these cultural knowledges or cultural tools from adults to children. And so children are internalizing their experiences that they have with others, and this shapes their world or mental representation of the world. And this helps children develop cognitively throughout their life. Let's talk a little bit about how Vygotsky and Piaget compare and contrast. So both Piaget and Vygotsky believe that children are going to be interacting with their environment, and this helps them develop cognitively. Both also are emphasizing the importance of social interaction, that we need to be around others in order to learn and develop. And they agreed that children learn best when the new knowledge can be linked to existing knowledge or previously learned concepts. However, they're different in the sense of Piaget really believed in these fixed stages. So sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. While Vygotsky doesn't really think there are stages that children go through. He believes that there's continuous development throughout our lifespan and through social interaction. Vygotsky places a greater emphasis on the role of social interaction, specifically with the idea of a more knowledgeable other. A more knowledgeable other, or MKO, can be a teacher, a parent, or other peers that know a little bit more. And this person, the MKO, is a driving force in development. Piaget, on the other hand, really focuses on that child's independent exploration of the world around them, rather than relying upon a more knowledgeable other. Piaget believes that development precedes learning. So we have to develop physically first before we can learn new concepts. He believes that we need to reach a certain stage before we can learn certain things. So in order to learn conservation, we need to reach that concrete operational stage. Whereas Vygotsky argued that learning actually can come first and force us to develop cognitively. Children can be guided through higher levels of thinking, through social interactions, and we can push children to think more critically with the help of a more knowledgeable other. Vygotsky believed that culture and language play a central role in shaping our cognitive development, where Piaget really is focusing on those universal stages of development that are pretty much independent of cultural context. So Vygotsky believes that development could look different from culture to culture, whereas Piaget believes that it's going to be pretty much the same all around. One of the key points of Vygotsky's theory is the idea of the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. And this is the idea that children have a gap between what they can do independently and what they can do with support or with the help of a more knowledgeable other. And scaffolding involves providing that support by the more knowledgeable other to ensure that the child can fill that gap of what they can do on their own versus what they can do with the help of an adult. If we scaffold a situation or a problem for the child, then they can reach higher levels of cognitive development or cognitive thought. This is what most education is built off of. This idea that we know you can do this skill right here. We want you to do this skill. I'm going to provide you with some support to help you bridge that gap between those two different skills.